Hi, good afternoon. I was thanking one of my colleagues for putting up pictures of rats in his presentation because I do indeed have 2 rats at home that I actually miss them and the interactions with them. So this is a very interesting and slightly different topic for me to be able to work on. Typically my work does involve social emotional development of 3 to 6-year-old children and how they perceive the quality of their relationships with the animals both in and outside of their classroom. I wanted to do something unique for this presentation and for the 2012 conference and to look back at the 25 years of the Anthrozoos, the multidisciplinary journal for the International Society of Anthrozoology. And I wanted to thank Anthony very much for his help in brainstorming some of the ideas for both this work and the continuation of this work that I'll talk about towards the end of this, and also for much easier access to the journals because you will see the quantity of journal articles that consisted as part of this study. So back in 1993, a publication in the Anthrozoos was done by Rejecic and Beck that looked at the research articles that were presented. And they did a select content analysis where they looked at 85 papers. And these 85 papers were categorized either as research articles or review articles. They looked at the author demographics for them. They were mostly looking at the individual authors. So how many unique authors published within those 85 journal articles. They also looked at academic disciplines. They broke it down to 4 categories listed there. So this was sort of the basis, the diving board, if you will, that I used to try to jump off into expanding that from the 5 years into the 25 years. So you can see this was, again, a content analysis, but the sheer number of articles jumped up to 448. So again, Anthony, thank you for the PDFs to make this a lot easier for me to go through. And again, the journal started in 1987, and I looked at all of the issues through 2011. I do want to point out that I looked specifically at the research and review articles. I did not look at book commentaries or book reviews or movie reviews of that nature. I, again, like the 1993 article, wanted to look at author demographics. I wasn't so concerned with the uniqueness of the authors. I wanted to look specifically at the gender that was being represented in the publications and also the geographic locations that were represented in the publications. We also broke it down by academic discipline, and you can see as the field developed and grew, so did the academic discipline. So we were looking at social sciences, natural sciences, liberal arts, so English, the humanities, education across the board, whether it was college education, early childhood education, health, which included a lot of the medical fields, and nursing, and then another category for private organizations and foundations. There were some dolphin research centers that were a part of that group. There were also children's hospitals that were part of that group. So of the 448 articles, females were first author on just over 57% of the first authored articles, so over half. For second authorship, there were 329 articles that had 2 or more authors and 159 females. There were 173 research and review articles that had 3 or more authors, and again, females were about the 50%, so fairly equivalent there. 72 of the journals had 4 or more authors, and again, an even split between the genders. And believe it or not, there were journals that had up to 9 authors, journal articles. There was only one that had nine authors with that, and females had 65%. So in thinking about where our study, where our field comes from, I wanted to look geographically. What countries are producing the more published articles in Anthrozoos over the last 25 years? 230 of the 448 articles came from the United States. And this is first author only. So there might be some interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary work that is happening between people in the United States and people in Sweden, or different research groups in Japan happening to work with people in Australia. But this was only looking at the first author identification. Australia came in second. My colleague that talked about camel, Sarah, was saying that there's lots of Australians here, so I'm glad that this was in the study somewhere. The United Kingdom came in third with 40 research and review articles published in Anthrozoos over the last 25 years. Of Canada, I'm going to put these up real quick and talk about them. I selected 12 here. These are the top rated countries with publications. There are many, many countries that have published 1 to 4 articles. There are lots of countries that ended up publishing, and so it would take a lot of slides to put that up there. But I wanted to show sort of the trends that are happening. And in order to really show the trends, we needed to look at some cross-tabulations. So who's publishing gender-wise, and where are they publishing from, was one of the questions that I wanted to explore. So the question is, are more males publishing from the UK, more females publishing from the United States? And basically what I'm going to show you are the top, well, not even the top, just 12 randomly selected countries. I, of course, had to include the top 3 published countries of Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. But I did want to throw some other countries in there that weren't represented in other slides. So you can see in Mexico, out of the 3 first authors that came from Mexico, they were all female. In Taiwan, the first author was a male on the paper. There were no female first authors from Taiwan. And so we're looking at some of the even splits with France. We're looking at a close split with Japan. Sweden, all female first authors. Switzerland, 6 female and 4 male first authors. And the United Kingdom, very equal. Very data-heavy slide, so I apologize and hope that the format works out fairly well. It was great to look at all 25 years as one lump sum publication, those 448 articles over 25 years. But I really wanted to look at some of the themes and the trends that might have changed over time. So what I had done for this is to break it down into 5-year chunks. So we have 5-year periods to look at, going back to the 1993 article that really started looking at the content analysis for Anthrozoos. So between 1987 and 1991, you can see Australia had 1 publication in Anthrozoos, the United Kingdom had 1, and the United States had 57. 1992 to 1996, that jumped for both Australia and the United Kingdom and went down slightly for the United States. So we're starting to see a little bit of a greater diversification in where the publications are coming from in Anthrozoos. Again, we're seeing in 1997 to 2001, the United States is fairly consistent there. Australia and the United Kingdom are fairly consistent as well. 2002 to 2006, we see a huge upsurgence with Australia and the United Kingdom getting articles published in the research and review section. And the United States are a little bit of a decline, still fairly consistent. And now for the most recent data, the last 5 years, Australia has 19 in the last 5 years published within the research and review. United Kingdom went down a bit to 8, and the United States at 49. So again, harping back to Sarah's speech and the number of Australians attending, go Australia, yay. So we're just looking at some of the trends and what's happening in terms of the peer-reviewed research and review articles that are being published. So who's publishing them? We know the gender of who is publishing these articles. We know where the country of origin is from for the first author. But what's the department affiliation? What are the natural sciences producing? What's the level of publications that social science or education or nursing is producing? So I wanted to look at that as well. So liberal arts in general, the first line is going to be in total of all 448 articles. Liberal arts had only 45 or 10% of the sample for that. Health had 6.7%. And it's interesting because the health field is one of those that varies widely across those 5-year gaps. We'll see. And education had only 9 articles published from 1987 to 2011. And that's my field, so I kind of look at that and I'm like, what's going on with people in the education field? Natural sciences had 75, so 16.7%. And you might not be surprised at all to find out that social sciences had the largest group of articles published, 216, almost 50% of the articles published in the 448 articles came from a social science department. And then we had about 16% from the other categories. So again, looking at the independent research facilities, the Center for Disease Control had some publications in there, as well as the dolphin research centers. Some wildlife facilities also published research in there too. So again, we looked at some of the countries by year, looking at the affiliation by year, again, to look at some of those trends. Who is producing these articles, publishing these articles at what point? So back in 1991, that 5-year period, we saw 9 in the field, in the medical field, which is very, very high for that group. 92 to 96, we saw 0 in education. 6 in health, fairly consistent with that. And again, this is where you're really seeing the natural and the social sciences producing a lot of peer-reviewed articles. In 97 to 2001, again, education does not have any there, 22 for other. It's a great rise in publications for that 5-year period. I'm not going to stand here and speculate as to why, although I've looked at all of the journal articles and I have some thoughts about what was going on in there, but I need to really go back and analyze those a little bit more closely before I postulate about those. A hint is the wildlife area and looking at the independent research that's happening in therapeutic settings that are not affiliated with the university. 2002 to 2006, again, the natural sciences and social sciences, and again, that other piece is coming up again. So we're starting to see those other institutions really having a voice in our field of human-animal interaction and working with animals and people together. It's the fastest 20 minutes, 15 minutes of my life. 2007 to 2011. Social sciences hit their heyday with 66. And again, the other is staying fairly consistent, a little bit of a decrease from 1997 to 2001. I know it's a lot of data on here, but you can always talk with me during lunch or whatever. I have all the SPSS printouts too with me. So yeah, I'm a data freak. I love numbers. So this was great fun for me over my winter break. I sat there and looked at all of the data and played with it. So much so that we actually came up with some ideas to go back into the data to look a little bit more closely at additional variables and looking at some study participant demographics. So we have the author demographics. Who are they studying? Are they looking at young children? Are they looking at geriatric populations? Are they looking at populations that are in a school-based program or in a prison-based system? Where are they? Where are the people that are participating in this research that makes our field so rich and so valuable? I also wanted to look at the population if they have specific disabilities that people are working with. We've seen a lot in the program about working with people and children specifically with autism. Is that being represented here more so in the latter part 5-year chunk or earlier on? How has that demographic shift of participants in our studies changed over the 25 years? Also wanted to look at the type of animal that has been included in the study. Are we looking at equine studies? Are we looking at dolphin studies? Are these laboratory animals? Are they wildlife animals? Are they companion animals? Are people working with their certified pet-assisted therapy, dogs, cats, rabbits, rats, that they might have? Who's being worked with and included in this study? And what type of intervention or study was done? Was this a controlled experiment? Was this survey research? Are we looking at attachment or modifying animal behavior through the work that's being published in this multidisciplinary journal over the last 25 years? So just a quick summary, and we've gone through a bunch of this with having females be the first author on just over half of all research and review articles over the last 25 years. Australia and the UK greatly increasing their presence in the research and review articles. And social and natural sciences really having a foothold in this publication. And what they're putting out there from those academic disciplines are really taking about 50 to 60% of the journal space. And liberal arts, thankfully, again, part of that multidisciplinary piece is starting to come up again. So again, this has been a very unique study for me to be able to work on, a unique presentation for me to put together, because I only have one animal picture in my presentation, and that's Bradley, who I work with restorative justice back in New Hampshire with adolescent youth, and hopefully we'll get an article in Anthrozoos about someday soon. Thank you.